And let's have a look at JavaFX. And if you haven't already got started with JavaFX, or you may be struggling to get it loaded up with the external dependency, there's a really easy way to do it with IntelliJ. The IDE, because in IntelliJ there's a dedicated template for JavaFX. So when you create a new project, you can select JavaFX from the list of templates and give it a name. And you've got options of language as well. You can stick with Java, and there's other ones as well, Kotlin and Groovy. And then we've got two file management systems. We've got Maven and Gradle. Maven is very clever because it can actually download the dependency, the reference for JavaFX, this external file library. It can handle that for us. And indeed, so this should get you set up quite nicely with a JavaFX application, and with a little bit of tweaking with the configurations, so I'm going to walk you through in just a moment, you can get a JavaFX application loaded quite nicely. So this is given to us very handily. Of course, you can change it if you want to, but in order to get it running, you have to build it first, just so it's got something to work with. It's the little hammer, the green hammer to the left of the configuration file. So in case you can't find the hello application by default, in case it doesn't come up, just configure it and build it first, and then you should see this that you can select. And then once you've configured it, you can then run it. So you just click on the green arrow to run the application, and here we go. We've got a JavaFX application, and it's just giving you some code to start with, where you've got a hello button. Where you click on it, you just see a little welcome message. Okay, so they get the form that's a little bit nicer, doesn't it, than AWT? Nicer graphics to it, nicer buttons, so a bit more current if you wanted to switch from AWT to JavaFX and have a go at creating some applications with that. And then also with JavaFX, we have the advantage of designing our forms in a more efficient way. We can make use of the GUI designer, which is a visual interface, and we can actually drag and drop components onto the form and move them around and change their properties without having to do the coding manually. Of course, we're going to see in a moment that it does all come back to the code, and indeed when we move things around and change the properties, it is actually an instruction. It is just generated automatically. We don't have to write that ourselves. So in order to have a go at that, we're currently looking at the hello application.java, Java code, it's JavaFX, but in order to get to the form designer, you have to go to the fxml file, which is under resources. And in case you're unfamiliar with XML, it's just a tagging system, a structure, if you like, that a bit like HTML, if you're familiar with that. It's just a way of representing things in a tagging system that you define. Okay, so here it's going to relate to the contents of the form, and that we see in the text view of this. This is the XML code given to us. So actually combining Java with XML, and then you can, under the little tab there, see where it says text, that to the right of it there's Scene Builder. And when you click on that, you should see something like this, which gives you a nice graphical user interface for you to modify. You've got the controls and the components on the left-hand side of that. You can literally just select, drag and drop them onto the form. And then on your right-hand side, you've got the properties, which are basically like the attributes, the parameters, if you like, that you can specify quite conveniently. The text that's going to go on the button, the font of it, the size of it, the layout of it, and then we can also code the events via this as well. For example, if you go down to the code tab, you can then see an on action option, which is where we can provide the response to clicking on the button. It's the event on click, essentially, and you've got lots of options down there as well if you want to have dedicated code being activated once you perform that event. So we then go back to our, well, we actually go to the controller, which will handle the logic for the application, and you'll see there it's already given us some logic. When we click on the hello button, on hello button click, we modify the little label, we set the text for it, it's Java, we set the text to be this message, welcome to the JavaFX application. So if we want to provide our code, we would have to code an event. We would provide an on-click event method, such as, let's say we want to have a clear button, which just resets that text. Here we create an on-click button method, and that just sets the text. So when we go back to our form designer and we create a clear button, we can actually just drag and drop it onto the form. On the action of that clear button, we can then select on clear button click, and then that code's going to be activated, the one which we just put in the controller, that method's going to be called when we click on the button. Okay, so recompiling it and running it, let's say I clicked on hello, showed me that text, and then I clicked on clear, and it just reset it. It just got rid of the text. Okay, so that's an event-driven way of coding your applications, and far more convenient because that's probably the only code you're going to have to write. You can actually modify all the attributes via the GUI itself. You can organize the form via the GUI. You can also change the properties and the attributes via the right-hand side as well. So the only code you're going to have to write is the event handling, and when you click the controller.